NZ Aerosports, Icarus Canopies, now Gyro. That's right, we've rebranded, and Gyro is our next generation. It honours our founder, as that's the name we knew him by, but Gyro also marks the start of a new chapter. And not to be biased, but it's going to be fucking epic. Long story short, we're more us than ever. So if you're new to the sport, or even a Sky God Ninja Turtle, welcome. I think our valiant leader Lucy, Gyro's daughter, says it best.
And we still got that fuck yeah attitude. Rebrand! Woo!
Rebrand woo indeed, Lucy. Anyway, head over to gyro.com for more info and get amongst you legends.
I was 19, broke, unemployed, and sold my girlfriend's canopy for drug money. So I thought I better sew her a new one. What a sentence, and what a story. This describes the humble yet outrageous beginnings of NZ Aerosports, the home of Icarus Canopies, in the words of our founder himself. From getting a paratrooper toy from his mom, watching parachutes at the DZ as a 6-year-old, jumping off the wharf with a parachute made from bed sheets, doing his first jump at 16, sewing his first canopy on a borrowed machine at 19, and starting to sell parachutes out of a garage in 1986, Paul Gyro Martin had an undying love for the sky. Our company started with one man with the wildest of spirits and a true blue sky dream, a renegade. In the time that Gyro created and ran the Icarus Canopies brand until he passed away in 2017, he pushed everything he had to its limits. We miss him, and we always will. Gyro is the next generation of NZ Aerosports. It honors our founder, of course, because it was the name we all knew him by, but Gyro the rebrand also marks the start of a new chapter, our next jump. Gyro is the space between sound and silence, art and science, chaos and calm. Gyro is a state of epic tranquility that transcends understanding. That moment, in the door, in free fall, mid-swoop, where nothing but the present exists. A perfect balance of euphoria and thrill. Gyro captures our passion for flying and our commitment to designing break-the-fucking-rules canopies that deliver pilots pure, wild flight. Hey gang, so I got a new book out. It's called The Upside of Fear, and it's exactly what you think it's about. It's about the good side of, well, getting scared. In it, we talk not only about the science and biology behind fear, but the psychology as well. And it's not just coming from me, it's coming from some of the best in the sport. Omar Alhigelan, Jeff Provenzano, Maxine Tate, and so many more have contributed their sometimes terrifying stories to the book to help you overcome your fear. So head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com. You're going to find the link to the book there, as well as the other books. It's available in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook right now.
Coming straight from the cockpit, it's another episode of Lunatic Fringe with the fucking pilot.
Ready, set, go! All right, back in the can with another edition of Lunatic Fringe Into the Void, and I've gotten really used to doing it this way. It seems to work best. Let's just jump into it. Who the fuck are you? What do you do?
Hi, I'm Jarno Cordia, originally from the Netherlands, these days living in Switzerland since about 2 years now. And I do a lot of smart and dumb stuff in wingsuits. I think that basically sums up my career.
I like that. I'd say that's probably the best way you could sum it up. Hopefully dumb and smart, and also a little bit of luck thrown in there too.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think definitely if you look at the stuff in the beginning, it was more on the luck side, and as the years progressed, I think getting a bit older, getting a bit smarter.
Sure.
And these days, there's definitely a bit more calculation in
Nice.
what I do.
Nice. Well, we talked before we started recording about just how long you've been doing the wingsuiting thing, but let's dive all the way back to how you got started, not just necessarily in skydiving and base jumping, but anything extreme. Is this something you've always done, or?
I've definitely always had, especially with aerial sports and stuff, a thing. My uncle and dad, they're actually twins. My uncle used to skydive, but that's talking way back in the 1970s. My dad was about to start skydiving then as well, and my dad actually was a packer at the drop zone. And then my uncle had an accident and broke his back, landing around, I think, into a fence.
Oh,
and
Jesus.
that basically had the whole family discourage my father a bit from starting skydiving. But I think he always sort of had that fascination with anything flying and skydiving. So over the years, there was a drop zone quite close to where I lived. And I got dragged here or there to a drop zone or watching like skydive demos. I've been to a lot of air shows, that kind of stuff. And through that fascination, I think 1999 I started skydiving.
Okay.
Did always have like a thing with other sports. Like I've done, I would almost say pretty much everything one way or another.
Sure.
But skydiving definitely was the thing that got me hooked. And yes, very slowly that started. It went from like hobby, and then in like 4 or 5 years, it turned into more like, part-time work almost.
Sure.
And then from there, it went from worse to worse until it actually developed into like a full-time job.
Sure. Now, was there resistance in the family, especially considering your uncle broke his back doing what you were now pursuing? Was your family going, "Hey, whoa, what are you doing?"
I think from my mother's side, there was definitely when I had like 15 jumps and I started doing like two ways and that kind of thing. I sort of got the question like, are you sure you want to like already start now making it more and more crazy, jumping with other people and stuff? But at the same time, she was the one, she's quite a good seamstress and has actually helped with adjusting a few wingsuits and stuff over the years as well. But I think when I had like 30 jumps, she actually made my first jumpsuit. So there, I think from the family side, there's been nothing but support always. And I think in general also.
Isn't it funny how you get pushback from the family initially, but inevitably they end up either at least accepting it, but most of the time, like bragging about it to other people that their crazy son does this or that or the other thing. So what they were so resistant to, next thing you know, they're like secretly bragging to all their friends.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's sometimes very sort of fun, humbling, where you post something on Instagram or something that you think looks very cool. And then like your mom is the first to comment like, are you being careful or something? It's like, Mom, I'm being cool for my friends.
I think that's kind of that inside joke though, right? With skydivers, we all kind of giggle. Every once in a while, my dad will put something up on Facebook, and in the classic old man style, everything's in capital letters, and he's not really sure what he's talking about. And you just kind of shake your head and go, all right, well, at least my friends are going to get a good giggle out of this.
Yeah. No, I think in general, even though, it's there, I think it's good to have a lot of people around you that sort of keep you grounded in that stuff, because it's, you can be a very famous person in the sport, but the moment you take one step out of a drop zone, there is not a single person that knows who you are or thinks of you as anything else but like a lunatic that is dealing with some suicidal issues. So.
Right. That was always one of the things that used to come up too, and people would bring up, what's the end game in skydiving, and what successes do you think you're going to get out of this? Because you're the best at this super obscure thing that you do, and people can't figure out why you do it in the first place, and it's very difficult to explain to people that don't jump.
No, and I think even inside the sport, like the motivations vary a lot. For some, it's really just an escape from like their normal thing, or even I think maybe to some a way to be special in a way that they're perhaps not in their normal day job or life.
Sure.
But I think for me the main attraction is actually just having goals in what you do, be it competitive or be it like in personal skills. So for me, most of the flying that I have to actually say we do as a team. Because I would really say 99.9% of all the jumps I do at the moment with Jenna, who's basically like my partner in or really everything I do. And there I think we both really have the motivation to just constantly be better. And it's that's be it like the way a gymnast treats the sport or somebody doing parkour or whatever other sport. I think for us, having those training goals where we want to achieve a certain something, that is to me what makes the flying a lot of fun. And even though just jumping out of the plane and randomly doing stuff, it still excites me and still makes me enjoy everything. But
Sure.
there's definitely always, with everything we do, there's a bit of a goal behind it. Like in base jumping, my personal thing is really the camera work. Like I really get a big kick out of getting a really good shot.
Sure.
And yeah, we and I think the weird thing is, like, I think to a lot of people that kind of focus on actually treating it always as like training, almost like the way like a swimmer trains for the Olympics.
Sure.
But I think to us that training is actually what the fun is. And even though like when we go to the wind tunnel in Sweden, the wingsuit tunnel, and we during like the week that we coach there, we always try to at least fly an hour or 2 hours for ourselves as well to train, to keep the skills up, so we have stuff to teach.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's we never come out of the tunnel like 100% satisfied, but it's always more in a way where it's like, oh, this could be better, that can be more efficient. And
Sure.
and there it's really nice because I definitely have a big focus on like video in everything I do, which comes from my previous job where originally I'm actually a 3D animator, special effects artist, and doing like a lot of stuff with basically with camera, graphics, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, basically there is almost not a thing that I do that is not on camera, which is funny because Jenna has the complete opposite thing. She's really about enjoying the jump and really
Sure.
doesn't give a hoot about what is on video.
Sure.
Which definitely has been a thing that I sort of also had to learn and actually now enjoy a lot more. Like most of the base jumps we do are completely without cameras.
Sure. Well, now when you got started in the sport, you obviously, if you are a 3D animator and have some serious education behind you, you were doing other stuff besides just jumping out of airplanes. So how did that all blend together when you started jumping? Apparently you were going to school and all this. So how'd you end up just jumping off cliffs and shooting videos?
Well, actually, I started jumping. I have to do the math, but yeah, basically judging the gray hairs, I think I'm quite old at the moment. I started jumping when I was 21 or something like that. So I'd already finished school. I was actually done with school quite early because
Wow.
from a young age, I knew what I wanted to do. So I think I was 17 when I was already done, and then already working for a small TV station.
Oh, wow.
Doing like editing and that kind of stuff. I started in 2000. I started jumping in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2005 is where I basically started my own company, 3D animation stuff, and together with back then a friend, and that actually grew to like having 2 people working for us and a small office in Rotterdam in Holland.
Oh, wow.
And actually not being too unsuccessful doing stuff like editing, little animation, special effects work for video clips, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
But being like my own boss, it also allowed me to sort of do this thing where I would work like an idiot for two weeks in a row. And then if there was no work, instead of just sitting in an office, I would actually go away for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So started to plan the work a little bit where it developed basically from having like a full-time job to, I think the whole self-employment thing for me was always a way to sort of try and work smarter, not harder.
Sure,
and,
sure.
And even though I would have loved to work in skydiving right from the start, I do believe that working like packing on the drop zone or that kind of stuff, it is indeed working in skydiving, but I think having a really well-paid job outside of skydiving and purely doing skydiving as hobby, it definitely allows you to acquire skills a lot quicker, which in the end will allow you to sort of, make a living out of skydiving in like a more fun way.
Sure. Well, I think that's the key, right? Is for people like me who I didn't do the packing mat route, but I started shooting video very, very early on in my career.
Yeah,
and then next thing you know, I'm doing tandems and AFF, and it became an all-encompassing way of life to the point where on a day off, the last thing in the world that would cross my mind was going to the drop zone to fun jump. Because I had just done, 75 jumps this last week or 100 jumps. So I think doing it that way, you keep that, I don't want to say the enjoyment, because I enjoyed the hell out of all the years that I worked full-time jumping, but there's a bit more passion involved when your skydive is 100% yours and not your students. So
Yeah, definitely.
I mean,
that is, I think, also how for me it turned into like an actual job that actually almost happened without realizing. I started wingsuiting basically winter 2003. And then, so that's now, what is it, 19 years ago, 18 years ago. And that's the thing I always hate now about this age. Like when you register on a website, you have to scroll back so far to find your birth year.
Oh, tell me about it.
But I basically started wingsuiting, and back then I was really like one of the very few people that was wingsuiting. Like in Netherlands back then, I was one of maybe like 15 people that did wingsuiting, but like 1 or 3 or 4 that actually did it as their discipline and not just as a thing they did on the side.
Sure.
And you'd really see that if you went somewhere, you'd sort of really have to almost like work hard to meet other wingsuiters to jump with. And I remember back then when I went to different drop zones, I think every third drop zone that I went to jump, you got the comment like, wow, you're the first person to jump a wingsuit here.
Right.
And like now that's unimaginable.
Oh,
but,
yeah. Well, I equated it to when I talked to the squirrel guys. I equated it to when snowboarding started to come on the scene with skiing. And for the longest time, it was, those of us still on skis going, get the hell off my mountain, knocking my moguls down, all this shit. And of course, now you could not imagine a mountain without, snowboards on it. So I think it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. It's now on a drop zone. It's quite common to just see wingsuits walking around. It's no longer like a novelty thing.
Sure.
And what I had back then, there was basically not too many wingsuiters around, but there were back then dropzone.com was like the big thing where you would communicate, because it wasn't really like a Facebook world and stuff like that.
Sure.
So there was then like a lot of sort of meeting up at boogies and events and that kind of stuff. And I used to jump like with like some of them still wingsuiting a lot, others a bit less, but or even just people I looked up to, was like Craig Poxon from the UK, Andy Ford, those kind of people. There were people that you'd see at like various boogies. Sure. Like I went to the Hercules boogie 2004 in Sweden, spent a good 3 days falsifying a logbook because I had 300 jumps, and then I suddenly read that Sweden demanded 500 jumps to fly a wingsuit. So, and then basically several people around me said, just write a few pages and just say, 500. That's just a Swedish local rule.
Sure.
So I arrive at the check-in at the boogie, show my paperwork, and sees how many jumps do you have. I'm like 540. And I really, from like jump 300 to 540, I wrote a story for every single jump, forged different signatures of people, everything. And then they never asked for the logbook.
Of course. Of course. Oh, man.
But yeah, no, and that was fun. Like I think at that boogie, we flew like the first 14-way, like a V formation.
Sure.
And that was all super cool stuff back then. And yeah, I think that boogie in 2004 definitely sparked like an enthusiasm with me for the wingsuiting, where I basically did a bit of free fly and a bit of tandem video.
Sure. And
a bit of FS4, like a bit of everything. Like a little bit of everything, but not really good at one thing.
Right.
And then wingsuiting really clicked, and especially when I was doing like back flying and nobody else could really do that yet, I think. And then also like jumping with Andy Ford in Sweden, that was definitely like, so somebody else having like a similar amount of fun with the wingsuits. That sort of just made me more and more want to be better at it.
Sure.
And through that, more and more people started asking me for tips about flying. And I mainly, doing a few events here or there, I mainly got annoyed that it was unlike other disciplines, it was very disorganized, just people jumping on loads randomly, not really, like if you join a good like organizer in free fly or FS, you do the same jump 2-3 times until it works,
Sure.
and there's not just randomly people walking on at boarding time. So I basically organized like my own thing, going to like Empuria Brava in Spain and having like, I think we had like 10 people that I knew that were okay flyers and everybody a bit disciplined. And we started doing stuff there and we did really fun, cool flying like 2005 to 2008.
Sure.
And then at some point that developed into some of these people asking like, hey, we really enjoyed that. Could we actually pay you to come with us on like our next trip to do that? And sort of, unknowingly that developed into coaching, and in the beginning just for, like getting expenses paid, but at some points getting asked so much that it's became an actual job.
Well, and you're also talking about a time, especially with wingsuiting, when I think the whole industry and the whole sport was trying to figure out how to do it safely, right? I mean, where the hell do the wingsuits go? When do they get out? Where should they be flying? I mean, lots of scary stuff in an environment where you're having to learn with skydivers that don't just fall down anymore or at an angle. They're going all over the fucking place. And for those of us in the States, we, especially sitting in the pilot seat, we had to contend with wingsuiters loving clouds, as you would, and getting their pilots in a shitload of trouble because the FAA says it doesn't matter how far that wingsuiter flew to get to the cloud, it's still the pilot's fault. So you were there when it was all, I mean, you guys were having to learn all these lessons firsthand and the changes you must have seen.
Yeah, it's there. I'd almost say, sadly, there is a lot more knowledge now, but I do think it's at the moment still quite spread out. And at the same time, there's also, I think, a lot of stuff now that is just been perpetuated in terms of like what people say.
Sure.
But there isn't really sort of like what you have with free fly. If you ask a coach like, how do I go forward? How do I go backwards? Every single coach will give you the same tips.
Sure.
Quite excited to talk about free fly because Jen and I are actually just getting into doing a bit of vertical tunnel recently. But if you ask like a wingsuit coach, like how do I do this or that, there's several ones that can give really good like meta advice, like do this with your shoulder, do this with the arm, do this with do this with your angle. But a lot of the sort of stuff you hear currently in wingsuiting is still sort of like more like you're attending a yoga class, like, feel the speed and go with the angle, feel the flow and that kind of stuff. So I think wingsuit compared to other disciplines still, I think, has a long way that it can go. And I think especially in what's possible, if you look at like the amount of dedicated, repetitive training that FS and free fly teams or individuals do on certain things, I think there's very few wingsuit skydivers or base jumpers that put that amount of dedication into like just repeating one single task to get super precise at it. So there, I do still think that wingsuit now is at a point where free fly was 20 years ago, and I still think if we could fast forward 20 years, it probably still has a very long way to go. And I don't mean that we're now in the Stone Age. I just mean that I think there's still so much room for growth.
I think
what you can do.
I think the progression's just going to continue. I mean, as an outsider, I've seen it just, these huge strides, at least to me. Obviously, to somebody like you that's in it every day, it seems to be coming a little bit slower, but it's people like you that are doing the coaching and teaching people that helps that along quite a lot. And I'd imagine too, because you started coaching in wingsuiting so early on, that had to have improved your flying exponentially as well, right? I mean,
yeah, it's there. It made me, but that was actually almost the other way around. Like I was already before, through sort of my work obsession with video, like any second of video I got, and like way back there, back 2004, 5, 6. Finding like somebody else that jumped wingsuit and then on top of that somebody else that jumped camera was almost like a rarity.
Right.
So any video that I got, I definitely sort of overanalyzed and 2006, I started jumping with a friend here in Holland, and we actually formed like the team name that we still use, the Fly Like Brick, which at that point was a joke, but at the moment it's sort of become the brand
I
name.
think it's great.
And yeah, I think at the time our website read like Fly Like Brick is a wingsuit team. Fly Like Brick is our Indian name. And I think the second line was something like, we are Europe's best wingsuit team. And then it said something like, which is similar to being the only gay Eskimo, because there are no other European wingsuit teams. I think in today's politically correct cancel culture, I think that website would have disappeared ages ago.
Yeah. Well, I think
yeah, we
I think in the PC world, skydiving still lags behind a little bit, thankfully. Or I would have been,
Yeah.
they would have thrown me off the magazine and taken me off the air a long time ago.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, and there the whole definitely, like in what I was doing, it definitely professionalized slowly as I went along. And I think just through my own passion for doing like nicely edited videos on everything I did, I think I sort of got quite a bit of I think following or popularity is
Sure.
too big a word, but you definitely noticed that I was getting a bit noticed through just all the nicely edited videos.
Sure.
Which also with some people created a very incorrect image of what the videos, of course, are all the edited good moments.
Sure.
But of course, there's a lot of crap,
Sure.
like bad flying, bad transitions and stuff that doesn't make it into the videos.
Sure, of course.
But yeah, and I think that for me is still a big thing. Like I still love trying to capture what we do on camera and make like nicely edited videos of it. That's still like that whole visual aspect for me is still a big thing.
Well, and of course, you were ahead of the game before social media was what it is now, because now if you don't have a good visual presence in social media, you're fucked. If you're trying to keep any image out there.
There I'm actually sort of sad, like the whole Instagram thing, that I actually got into it so late in terms of the following you see people build.
Sure.
But also not really as a complaint or anything. But I think I've only been using Instagram for about 4 years.
Sure.
So like, really, I think I made an account in like 2015 or 16 when I went to China to that World Wingsuit League, and they sort of demand that you have an Instagram account.
Right.
So I made an account and then didn't do anything with it. Besides putting like 5 photos on it, I didn't do anything with it for like 2 or 3 years.
Sure.
And then I think it was somewhere like 2018 that I actually slowly started using it a bit more. And now I've definitely almost moved away from Facebook, because I think Instagram is a lot nicer with just a picture. It's really just about the pictures
Yeah, it's
or
all
videos.
visual.
And
it's all visual.
And Instagram, Facebook seems to be, last year that was mostly about Trump politics. And,
I think
now it's mostly about vaccines and
Facebook is armchair.
bullshit.
Facebook is armchair doctors and politicians, and it's long form bitching about this and that. And Instagram is the check out this cool stuff. So I think you're right in that. I'm still, I'm a bit like you. I was slow on the uptake with Instagram, but for me too, because I'm not producing the stuff that you're producing, my following on Instagram is only going to be people that are wanting to see what's next on the podcast, or what's next with the book. So for me, it's a little bit easier, and I'm not out there competing with the girl that's got 5 million followers because she's in short shorts. Which
no, for sure.
And hats off to her. I give her all the credit in the world. But speaking specifically of stuff like Instagram, and especially because you do such produced high-end videos, does it bug you that sometimes the shittiest little clips are the ones that get all the attention when you're putting all this work into really good stuff?
I think yes and no, because I do have to say I don't think I've ever done any jump or anything specifically for Instagram. Like, even though I do make really nice videos of what we're doing, but like when we are doing, like we started the year in January with a really nice helicopter jump with a long proximity flight, and then 4 minutes of crying because our hands were frozen on landing, but not doing that one again. But like even though the video on that is something that afterward I love and almost obsess over in editing and making it look nice to post. We're never getting in that helicopter, or we're never jumping off that cliff, and we're never really going into that wingsuit tunnel for a single second with the intent of, the Instagram post or Facebook post or YouTube video is never the original intent.
Sure.
And I definitely think that there is a danger of actually doing the jumps for that. Like especially in base jumping, you see certain people that are
Oh yeah.
definitely, I think, pushing harder than they should, just because they seem to be really eager to please an audience. And
Well, I mean,
I
you
think
would know
they're
this much more than me, but especially in base jumping and wingsuit base jumping, there's got to be countless injuries and fatalities directly related to trying to be a badass on social media because you saw someone else do something that you think you need to do better. So you're right. I think that's the worst motivation in the world is going out and jumping for Instagram.
Yeah, and I think in general, like social media is quite easy to get a bit of sort of like not even social media, but just internet in general. It's easy to sort of develop a very unhealthy relationship with it. And I have to say, I think the last 2 years, 3 years, I'm definitely doing a lot better with that. But I definitely also had a period, and I think that for me that was almost like 2010 to 2015, where I was way too invested about the choice of suit that I jumped, the style of flying I did, and almost getting into like argument, or not almost, just actually getting into arguments online with people. Where now I'm and that has definitely been Jenna that has sort of helped me ask, like, why the hell are you even spending time on this
Right.
when you could actually just be sipping a wine and watching a movie at home? Why would you sit there and
Sure.
spend time online arguing with strangers on the internet?
Yeah, no, I
Um,
agree. I agree. In fact, the one of the best things in the world for me was starting the podcast and having to do an Instagram and Facebook specifically for the podcast and the books and stuff, because it turned into a bit of a job, and my personal time on social media, not including the Trump era,
yeah.
backed down dramatically. And I will admit that I got way too deep into it with the political stuff. But now my personal social media footprint is very, very small. It's all just about the work that I'm doing. So I kind of am there with you.
Yeah, I think the last 3-4 years, I thankfully haven't had like personal life. I think we're both trying to keep that fully sort of off limits for online, and mainly try to just almost trying to treat internet like a post only thing. Of course, you do, especially with wingsuit stuff, try to stay a bit up to date with what everyone's doing, both from a point of inspiration.
Sure.
As from the competitive side, seeing what other teams are doing, to see if we need to step it up ourselves.
Sure. Now talk to me
But,
about competing in wingsuiting, because I will admit that I don't know a whole lot about what's involved in the competitions.
So the competitions, there've basically been all kinds of competitions from the get-go in wingsuiting. Various competitions, even some formats that are no longer there. One of the very first formats was, of course, the whole competitive flying thing with the GPS. And that was also something that in the beginning I definitely was a bit more invested in, because I really, there's definitely, I definitely have a bit more of a nerdy side than Jenna has in the team when it comes to like all that GPS stuff. But around 2008, we came up with like a competitive format for acrobatics, which was basically a bit copied from like free fly. So two competitors, and then one cameraman, and having a set of simple figures. And the first competition we organized in Skydive Spa in Belgium, and that was actually attended by like Tony from Tony Suits, Robert Pechnik from Phoenix Fly, and
Nice.
And that was a really super nice event, because I think there was like I think we had something like 10 teams or 11 teams in total, and
Wow.
yeah, everybody was there. There was not a single thing. Everybody saw it as a fun thing instead of as a competitive thing. And that event basically was organized annually, sort of as the international acrobatic wingsuit competition.
Nice.
It originally was called the Artistic Wingsuit Competition, but then once in, I think, 2015-16, slowly that process started of trying to get the format accepted into the FAI, or
Sure.
now the IPC, I think now ISC. Um, parachuting is not modern.
Right.
It's, back then, I think the first comment from the ISC was like, please drop the word artistic, because like any discipline that had like artistic stuff in it has had a long history of basically, you know, people arguing about the subjective side of it.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
but no, and then that format entered the ISC, and slowly like the acrobatic competition started. It did cause a big drop in participation because it was such a small discipline. A lot of the teams entering were actually mixed nationalities. And of course, ISC, it needs to be one nationality. And that actually meant that after all the work I put in to actually get it into like an official format or like official acceptance, and together with other people like from the US, Zach Schreudel, which I probably pronounce a bit too Dutch, but or German, but Jacques Schreudel and a few others really put a lot of work into trying to get that format ready for the ISC acceptance. And then at that point, I was no longer allowed to compete in the format because at the time my teammate was Belgium, and even though for me that was a 1.5 hour drive, I wasn't allowed to compete with that guy.
Jeez.
But somebody that's from Alaska and somebody that's from Hawaii, they're from the same country, so
Sure.
they're allowed to compete together. But through all kinds of weird travels in life, a lot of bad life decisions, I definitely hit a bit of a low spot in my life, and then actually came in contact with Jenna, who both from the side of jumping really sort of reignited the flame and turned my jumping from doing almost full-time like boogies and things everywhere to mainly doing the work in the wingsuit tunnel, which at that point had just started for about a year.
Sure.
And together with her, figured out a lot of the stuff that we're actually at right now that's being taught in the wingsuit tunnel. And because I started more and more being with her in Switzerland to the point where, now I'm spending roughly 90% of the year in Switzerland.
Sure.
Actually was able 2 years ago to start competing for Switzerland. That's been amazing. Actually, sort of being allowed to compete in the format that I sort of had a part in actually developing.
Right. After all this time.
And Jenna there had exactly the same drive I had in terms of wanting to be better, and we will spend in the wingsuit tunnel sometimes an hour of flying just on getting one certain dock or one certain move like really like tightly into the hand, or like trying to not fly faster but trying to fly like cleaner and more effective and just getting better, and that whole sort of competitive drive has been amazing. And I think at the moment in the current state of the world, both of us are equally frustrated because we love the wingsuit tunnel, but we're both aching to really go somewhere and do like a good 100 jumps to actually, start training for the Mondial, which hopefully is happening this August.
Yeah, hopefully. Now, in regard to the tunnel, before we started recording, I had said that I still have yet to put on a wingsuit and get out and jump. And you kind of laughed and said, yeah, don't, just come to the tunnel. So tell me about the tunnel and why the tunnel would be, for anybody that's listening that's like me, that maybe has been jumping a long time but has never put on a wingsuit. Why is that tunnel a good way to start?
Well, I think two things. Like, I think one, if you suck at FS, you get coaching. If you suck at free fly, you get coaching. If you suck at a wingsuit, people tell you to buy a bigger suit or a different pilot suit or a different rig or open the corners again. It's a very gear-focused discipline.
Sure.
And I think the really nice thing about the tunnel is that the slightly scary part of like the wingsuit jumping, where everybody has this fear of like cutaways and other things, even though it's not needed. In the last, like, I've had in 4,500 wingsuit jumps, I've had 2 actual cutaways, and The last one was a good 2,000 jumps ago. It's like it's not needed, but definitely it can be a scary thing. And
Sure.
I think for a lot of people, it can take the enjoyment out of it the first few jumps. And the wingsuit tunnel, it allows somebody to come there and really just focus on the flying. And then if you actually like the flying aspect, then you can take it outdoors, and then you don't start sort of having to get used to handling all the gear on top of your normal skydive, but you do already have a good background in skills and flying,
Sure.
where you sort of know what you're doing, when you jump out of the plane. A bit similar to what they these days do with these sort of like pre-AFF tunnel courses.
Sure. Well, and I would imagine, though, especially with the wingsuit equipment nowadays, the suits are so fucking high-tech, and they're so impressive with the power that they have. I would think in the real world, not in the tunnel, it would be very easy for someone to get themselves in trouble with a suit that's way too much for what they're capable of handling.
Yeah, for sure. And they're like there's of course all kinds of set jump numbers, like wait until you got 50 jumps to jump an intermediate suit, wait until you got like a good 200 jumps to jump like an advanced suit. But if all your friends are in a big suit and on the drops and you're just doing solos, then it's quite easy to go there. And I think what the tunnel allows is it does definitely blur sort of that line of like how many jumps do you need to do this and this. But it doesn't really matter if you're flying a small suit or a big suit. You're purely focused on the skill aspect, and if you fly with the right technique, then anything you do works either in a small suit or a big suit. And it definitely, I think, also allows people to sort of skip that phase of needing to do 50 solos to get the basic control, where you do half a dozen to a double dozen jumps to just get used to jumping the suits or two ways. But it allows you then to already have the skill to actually comfortably fly with others and do a lot more creative stuff with the suits, more in the way that you do with free fly or FS.
Well, for somebody like me, I think the tunnel would be epic for getting over what you were talking about in the beginning, which is basically gear fear. Being focused on being worried about what could go wrong instead of focusing on, what you're trying to learn to do. So for somebody like me, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we even do stuff like we have like this small dummy belt with a pilot chute handle on it, so you can even do like practice pulls and all the stuff in the tunnel. So it definitely allows you to go through the full, the full aspects of a wingsuit jump, and just get comfortable with at least that side of everything, so that first actual jump is hopefully at least a bit less scary.
Sure. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that we quite often hear back from like coaches, out there on drops, and to contact us like, we just had this guy that did like 2 hours with you guys, and he just came to the drop zone, and it's like jump 5, he was actually leading like a 4-way on his back, and it's
the tunnel, man.
That's been a big thing, and it's definitely the wingsuit tunnel. It's a bit more limited than vertical tunnel in what you can do, because like in vertical tunnel, everything sort of has, you can fly feet first or head first, but imagine the flying in the vertical tunnel only had head down, then you'd also be a bit more limited in what you can do.
Sure.
But even there, I think Jenna and I are both like personal flying probably close to about 100 hours over the last 3 years.
Wow.
And then coaching, we're both at around 1,500 hours or something like that.
Jesus. Well, I mean, I know from my own personal experience, teaching people always made me better at whatever it was I was teaching, because I had to mentally break down what it was I was doing to be able to explain it to these people. So with 1,500 hours of teaching people, you must just have it dialed in.
Well, it's of course there's also a lot of it is like when you're waiting for somebody to dock, sometimes you're just lying there on your back completely static, holding out a hand, and then, just giving pointers in body position.
Sure.
But, and of course the thing you have in the wingsuit tunnel, I would say about a third of the coaching we do is actually us walking in the tunnel. But that is also what makes it so much nicer, because like teaching somebody back flying, normally they would jump out of the plane, and if they basically screw up the exit, or they're bending the legs down and they're basically going down, spiraling down like water down the sink, then basically the jump is over. And like in the tunnel, what is so amazing is that Jen and I always teach with two coaches at the same time. And then it's me walking or both walking and like teaching somebody to backfly. I basically hold them by the collar, hold them by one arm, and you put them on the back. And then Jenna flies in a wingsuit next to them and basically shows them what to do. And you can really do that thing where if somebody's flying a bit bent, I just grab the head and put it in the right position. And
Right.
in the sky, you're happy if people are even watching you, when you're coaching somebody. So there, if you're actually looking at like from a coaching point of view, I get to actually on a daily basis, I get to teach about, like 3-4 hours worth of flying. So if you put it in jumps, I think Jen and I have done like each like 15,000 jumps worth of coaching in the tunnel.
Which is amazing.
Where, yeah, and they're having done like the full-time jumping thing for many years, you end up going to a drop zone, and sometimes you just sit around all day waiting for weather. So it's also from like a time effective thing. It's
Sure.
really nice, and same with weather, of course, not being weather dependent.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, do you have a bunch of base jumpers heading your way looking to learn the wingsuit skills to take to the mountains?
Yeah, for sure. It's. I definitely think there is the biggest interest seems to be mainly from the skydiving side, the people with like formation flying or acro stuff
Sure.
in mind. I do think most base jumpers could learn a lot, but I think too many are focused purely on like the performance aspect, where
Sure.
like the agility side of things, learning to steer with the most minimal corrections, learning to actually fly slow and fast, which some people see as a disadvantage, but actually learning to fly different speeds at the same glide, where in the sky, a lot of people, if they slow down, they start to degrade the glide, and learning exactly where your stall point is, those kind of things, I think are actually super valuable.
Sure.
And especially in exits where, where things are not going fully in control. If you look at some of the other people coaching in the tunnel as well, either freelance or internal, if you see those people skydiving or base jumping, you see that there's a sort of where people are not flailing when things go wrong. It is always in any stage of the jump, base jump or skydive, everything is in control.
Sure.
And I think there, the amount of flying you can do, it can definitely, and I think especially for base jumping, teach you a lot of stuff about just the really fine skills in
Sure.
terms of, or the really fine motor skills in terms of control.
Sure. Well, I know in
That's-
talking to Nick Scalabrino and Matt Munting, a part of the reason that they are as successful and as dialed in as they are on a lot of their base jumps is because of the free flying background of Nick. And
they jump. They are also, I think, if you're looking at the people that are actually doing the amazing stuff, they are just flying a lot. And like if you look at Matt and Nick, they basically, if they're not on a cliff with a wingsuit, they're on a plane with a wingsuit.
Sure.
And if they're not doing that, then they're free flying or doing other stuff. But it's in the end, people start, especially in base jumping, a lot of people like they ask me like what my experience was or what Jenna's experience was when we started. And I had about 2,500 wingsuit jumps when I started with base. Jenna had, I think, 2,000 plus, like a good 500 hours in the wingsuit tunnel. And then people say like, holy shit, that's a lot. But if you look at somebody that has like 100 wingsuit skydives or 200 wingsuit skydives and wants to start wingsuit base jumping, imagine entering a martial arts tournament with 3 hours of martial arts experience.
Sure.
Or running a marathon, and it's like, I've been running like a total of 3 hours in the last few weeks or the last 2 years.
Right.
If you're looking at actual practice time, regardless if it's skydiving or base jumping, you're not getting a lot of practice time out
Sure.
of it. And their stuff, be it like skydiving a lot or be it tunnel, I think most of the seasoned jumpers that you'll talk to, they all have an incredible background in either other disciplines, but usually on top of that also wingsuit skydiving. And
Sure.
it definitely seems to be a bit of a dirty word for some, like, I bet fuck skydiving, I prefer base jumping. But if you see like the stuff we manage, like Jen and I, like when we're jumping like in Lauterbrunnen, which is not the highest cliffs in the world, but the stuff we managed to do there off like a low cliff in like a 10-14 second flight, we're actually doing quite a lot of acro stuff.
Sure.
Where other people are just spending, they're running up and down 10 times a day, but they're basically repeating the same mistake 50 times, trying and then hoping for a different outcome.
Sure.
And it's there like that. Doing any kind of dedicated training, tunnel or skydiving, it's I think the basis to actually improving.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I've seen, and I was lucky enough to talk to Nick and Matt about it, is the progression of the wingsuit base jumping, kind of backing away from the dirty, low terrain flying and more into the technical aspects, not quite down in the dirt and a little bit more off the terrain. Which for people like me who are watching my friends do these things is a nice deep breath I get to take because they're not clipping trees.
No, and there's a lot of things like I really enjoy with camera work, flying with basically a bit longer lenses. Like instead of like a fisheye thing, you fly with something like say like 35 or even 50 millimeter.
Sure.
And then the type of flights that Jenna and I do are never really close to terrain, but with basically careful lens selection, the visual you get is actually one that gives a lot more speed, and it gives this illusion of proximity without actually going into like the whole dangerous side. And like if it's about thankfully that game ended a bit, but that whole game of like who can fly lowest and closest, it's like everybody on the base fatality list won that competition. So there is, like I think if it's about who can fly closest and live, I think Jeb Corliss sort of is the undisputed winner. And and you see that also in what he does. Like he also backed away from that kind of stuff because everybody realized that is a game that's it's a dead end.
Yeah, it's like the no pull contest that were before both your and my time. Obviously, you don't want to win that game. I know. We both, even though I'm not directly in that world and the base jumping stuff, have more than a few friends that I've lost along the way. Not necessarily because they were trying to get dirty low, but because that's just where the flying was at the time. So it's very nice to see the skill level of the flying going up right along with the flying getting a bit away from the terrain. So I love seeing it.
But I think that's actually because it's two different things. I think, and that is, I think, in general, a bit of a problem with like less with skydiving, but especially with base jumping. There is two things that make people say, wow. And sadly, the sort of like social media side seems more impressed with the bad decision making, like flying close to terrain or doing something else. That is not a skill, it is a decision.
Sure.
Like I choose to fly close to something, and that is in the end, like if you drive your car 10 centimeters off the guardrail on the side and you do that for long enough, at some point you are going to get caught out and brush along that guardrail. And that is the same thing with it's purely a decision to fly close, and somebody that flies super low, you're basically applauding like, wow, he's stupid, and not saying that all the stuff in the past that was low is stupid. Like some stuff was done with a lot of skill.
Sure.
But we sadly live in a world where if you watch anybody doing like something, and like even looking at Matt and Nick, probably the videos they do where they are flying close to terrain probably get viewed more than the skydives where they're doing various acro stuff, where if you look at the skydives and the acro stuff, that is actually on a technical level and training and skill level way more difficult than actual base jumping stuff. But still there seems to be too much appreciation for that.
Well, I mean, it's
like
the whole
decision making side.
It's the whole fascination with threading the needle and potential death and injury. I mean, people are they're attracted to it for horrible reasons. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it over all the years, and I just talked about this with Junior and Omar, that every time there was a fatality at a drop zone, you see a spike in business because people are attracted to that kind of thing. And so that's the dirty low flying and all that stuff. It just draws people in. And I was always freaked out watching those videos because regardless of how skillful the pilot might be, something well out of their control could take them out of it. I mean, when you've only got a few feet to spare, it's not your skill anymore. It's just dumb luck.
Yeah. No, and then like I said, it's like there's always going to be that thing where if you look at skydiving and you flare a slight fraction of a second late and you slide it in instead of walking it out.
Yep.
that stuff happens. And like in base, you definitely want to have the margins to allow for those kind of slight lapses.
As we're hopefully getting through all this COVID crap, and the world is starting to, fingers crossed, move forward, what's coming next? Do you have competitions that are coming up, training, trips? What comes up for you guys?
I think for Jenna and myself, at the moment, the Mondial, and hoping that's going to be August in Russia, and otherwise, most likely, if it gets postponed, it's going to be next year. I think Eloy, the World Championships or World Cup or whatever it's going to be.
Sure.
That is definitely our main aim in flying. On the side, we're still doing various things. Like we managed to shoot some stunts for a Netflix movie project.
Nice.
Last May. We're shooting next week in Austria. We're shooting a commercial where we're getting to do some proximity flights on the Matterhorn.
Wow.
So there's still quite a few sort of fun things in the near future for us. But the competitive flying and training in the tunnel and in the sky, that is our main thing. We're really eager to go to the US for 2-3 weeks to do like a combination of personal training and offering one-on-one coaching, because we're definitely getting a lot of requests for that. So, and depending on like the timing, that's either going to be something we probably do at Eloy or Elsinore or
Sure.
Paris, one of those 3 drop zones. And next to that, there's just a lot of fun jumping for us, which for us is base jumping, which is like for us both the thing where we're not really coaching, we're not doing anything that's purely like leisure, purely fun, and just enjoying being out in nature.
Yeah, you said your base jumps,
yeah.
you basically shut the cameras off now and just go play.
Yeah, we do of course here or there film something, but I would say that's probably like more than 2/3 of our jumps. We're not really rolling cameras, or if we're rolling a camera, it's purely something that is on, not with the intent of doing any actual filming, and then actually also not really doing any filming like actively during jumping. So it's
got to be very freeing.
It is definitely, and that is also in skydiving. Even when we're training, quite often we do it either with one video just to sort of debrief, but most of the time from the amount of flying in the tunnel, we're quite aware already during the jump of the things we need to change, do better, or that kind of thing. So yeah, just focusing on the flying and the fun and like the training aspect is really nice, and not having that worry about if a camera is on or that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, I mean, you said before though, for you guys, the training kind of is the fun. That's kind of the juice for you, which is fantastic, because for somebody like me, being able to go out and jump with no expectations and no nothing, I finally got to become, the fun jumper that I never got to be because I was too busy working. And, it was all about getting the job done. So now, of course, I've discovered the joy of going and being an idiot with no camera is just wonderful. But it sounds to me like you guys are just loving every aspect of it.
Yeah, 100%. And I did do like in the beginning, like from jump number 400 to 800 or so, I did quite a bit of tandem video, but that purely was for me the joy of doing the camera work in freefall and learning that aspect.
Sure.
And I never really saw that as a work thing. Like I would have done double the jumps that I did if I could have.
Sure.
But back then it was only a weekend thing. Jenna did have, she did do like, I think almost 2 years or I think a year and a half actually doing like tandems, and she did a good 300-400. But I think also for her, that sort of like job aspect of it is what made her slowly sort of do that less and less, and also went for the wingsuit stuff.
Sure.
Basically as like a full on, for us now, it's basically a job.
Which is fantastic.
Not in the last year, it hasn't been the easiest of jobs. Like thankfully, Sweden has stayed open.
Right.
Although biggest problem has just been everybody having issues traveling. So it's like we're just now back 1 day from a camp that we did in Sweden. And I think we're basically seeing not even a fifth of like the customers we normally see, and especially like UK and US not being allowed to travel into Europe at the moment still. Right. That's I think for a lot of people just really annoying, and for us it's just a thing where when we're there, we only have like 2-3 hours to fly during the day instead of like 6 or 8.
Right.
And yeah, we just enjoyed actually Sweden being open in terms of going to a restaurant.
Sure.
And we actually did a bit of flying in a vertical tunnel because that's not open anywhere else in Europe.
Right. Well, you said you just got back from this trip and you've got like the next 2 or 3 weeks ahead of you with nothing really to do, which is very unusual for full-time skydivers. Skydivers are not used to, all right, sit.
No, for sure.
They're not. Even if they don't travel, even if it's somebody that's just at their home drop zone, they're not used to, no, stay on the ground, sit there, and just behave yourself. It's a very difficult thing.
Yeah, and it made me pick up a lot of stuff that I hadn't done in years, Like I actually been drawing quite a bit again, which was actually something that by profession I was trained to do, but
Right.
As I got work, I never did it for fun anymore. Actually, 2004 already, I started writing down all the things in wingsuit flying that I thought were like cool to put to paper because there was nothing. And I did put out like various videos, little tutorials and those kind of things. And they were always, like well watched and everything. Over the years, I think I wrote a good 60 pages of what was intended to be like my wingsuit book that I wanted to publish.
Sure.
But then that was basically written from like 2004 up to 2012, 13 or something. But then that died a very lonely death on a hard drive somewhere. Basically, it's still there, but just didn't continue on it. And now last March, I basically picked that whole project up, read what I wrote back then, but fully tossed it and started from scratch.
Nice.
And started actually writing on it's always been a bit of a dream to like actually, publish a book, do a TED talk. Those are sort of like the little cool things that you sort of hope to do at some point. And that book project now, I'm in basically writing the last 3 chapters, and I'm now almost 300 pages in.
Amazing.
And the aim is to actually publish that like end of March. So this month, so I'm putting a bit of pressure on myself to actually finish that in time.
That's fantastic, man. I'll tell you what, that's such a huge accomplishment, especially considering the span of time that you're talking about. Yeah,
and I think it also I definitely also got a bit sportier again during the whole lockdown,
right?
Which is also good because I definitely got a bit more on the pudgy side, and you do want to keep fitting in those wingsuits. And like especially having a girlfriend / teammate that is insanely fit and sporty in everything she does. She's flying with Mr. Toad next to her. That's not going to help. So there, I definitely had to sort of step up and get a bit fitter, get a bit lighter and stuff.
Nice.
To actually just as a team to fly successfully together.
Well, hopefully you guys will be ready to tear it up once the world stops spinning off axis and gets back to normal, or at least a little bit.
Yeah, we hope so too. And there are also like various other things. Like there's the already quite a few years flew with a wingsuit with jet engines on like jet boots.
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk to you about that. I saw going through your Instagram a picture of you with that setup, and that looks pretty fucking intense, man.
It's not too bad. I also have to say I wasn't actually the first one doing that. It was actually a Finnish guy, Visa Parviana, which I'm probably pronouncing shitty, which I should be ashamed of because my name is actually Finnish apparently. But so I should at least know how to pronounce something Finnish. But he was the first one to actually jump with like the jet engines on the boots, and he actually already then managed like sustained level flight and climb. So what I did up to this point was basically copying what he did, but not actually sort of taking the next step yet. So I did in total only 4 flights with the setup because it was quite a pricey thing every time to organize, which thankfully a friend of mine owns a hot air balloon and sort of, sponsored a lot in what I did there.
Sure.
But we're at the moment through like a company that actually builds acrobatic airplanes, building the next setup, which is essentially going to be like a small, almost think of it like a jet backpack or like a baby version of the Jetman style wing.
Okay.
That Fred and Vince and Yves Rossi have basically made quite famous.
Sure.
But my goal is not to basically fly a wing, but I want to actually fly a wingsuit, but just with that push in the back where you can actually fly level and climb sustained.
Sure.
And doing that with the noise of jet engines. So, and they're, it sounds like a dentist drill from hell when you hear that. It's like those jet turbines, they spin at, I think it's 19,000 RPM.
Yeah.
And it's an insane sound. Like even 2-3 kilometers away, you still hear that.
Yeah, it's got quite a whine to it. I've heard them.
And it's I think that's going to be quite cool. So it's the aim is in 2-3 months to start doing some tunnel testing with basically a version of the jetpack without the motors in it.
Nice.
Then starting some skydives with it also without the motors, and then actually through like end of season to hopefully start. And most of what I'm saying now with the jet stuff is it's not the priority. The priority is really competitive training,
Sure.
and all this stuff is more fun on the side. And that is the aim. So like post World Championships to have that stuff to focus on more.
Nice.
But then, hopefully also have some very cool stuff to show and do.
Well, I'd say you've got a full calendar when it finally opens back up, so that you've got more than one or two things to keep going for sure. So now,
no, and they're. I've always been, one of staying busy.
For sure. Now, share with everybody your social media, how they track you. Also, tell people how they can get a hold of you for training in the tunnel and kind of following all your adventures. That way they know where they're going.
So, for our team side is Team Fly Like Brick, and that is the same on all media. So it's like Facebook or Instagram. If you basically follow Team Fly Like Brick or you check flyLikeBrick.com, you can find all the information about the tunnel camps. We do a camp every month, besides July, August, because then it's just way too toasty in that tunnel, and it's nicer to be outside.
Sure.
But we're basically open to all levels of flying. So somebody with 0 skydives, 0 anything can come to the tunnels. Somebody with 1,000 wingsuit jumps, and we definitely believe we have something to teach anyone at any level. Check out the dates and the camps and all the info on our website. My personal Instagram is Cordia, which is not Scottish heritage or anything. It's just my middle initials of my middle names.
Cool.
But Cordia on both Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and that's also where you find like all the videos on basically what we're doing.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, I can't wait to check out not just the jetpack stuff, but to see you guys get back in the air for competitions, because I know that's what you're chomping at the bit for. So I very much look forward to tracking your progress.
Yeah, more than welcome. Again, it's something we just love to do, and the more people we get excited for that, the more the discipline, I think, at an official level can grow as well.
Yeah,
so
more people to play with.
The more competition we have, the better. So we hope other people also get into this stuff and make life hard for us.
Awesome. Well, hey, I'll tell you, as always, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to sit down and share some of this with me. We're definitely talking again after you start competing again and get the jets in the air. So thank you so much.
More than welcome. And thank you for having me.
You betcha. Take care. Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Lunatic Fringe podcast, brought to you as always by, well, wait, not as always, actually. Brought to you now by Gyro. Formerly known as NZ Aerosports, you'll head to gyro.com for their next level line of canopies. By Pussfoot, the Extreme Sports Collective. Head over to pussfoot.com to check it out. By Summit Parachute Systems, check out summitparachutesystems.com to talk to Jarrett Martin and the gang about kick-ass pilot rigs, rigging courses, and more. By Flyaway Indoor Skydiving, go to flyawaytn.com and check out all the cutting-edge stuff to come. By Pure Spectrum CBD. Head to purespectrumcbd.com to check out their wide range of CBD products. And as for us, head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com to listen to any of the hundreds of episodes currently available. Hit the link for our YouTube channel, pick up your copy of the Lunatic Fringe book or The Accidental Stripper, and get a sneak peek at upcoming guests. Once again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Get on.